Hi, I'm Carter Clews. Welcome to Inside Judicial Watch, a very important edition of Inside Judicial Watch because we're going to be discussing the infamous Trump dossier and providing you a lot more information on it than the mainstream media or the FBI, the special investigator, Mr. Miller, are providing. And we're fortunate to have with us the expert, the Judicial Watch expert on the dossier. Welcome to the program, Jim.
Thank you, Carter.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Jim is a senior attorney with Judicial Watch, and you're the one who's filed the lawsuit on the dossier. I think to show you how much on top of the game you were, you filed it last year, right? If I'm not mistaken.
We started early, and we've been pursuing it all year in the courts.
Through the courts.
That's right.
I think if I'm not mistaken, my news release I have when you first filed the first lawsuit is May 2017. So it's been several months now, but actually you were on top of it before that. You were investigating and realizing there's something that's going askew here. Can you give us some background on what prompted you to first realize that there's something, a lot more to this dossier than meets the eye, and how nefarious, salacious, and sinister it actually was?
Sure, happy to. I think it's at this point where we're now, 11 months into, nearly 11 months into a Trump presidency. It's important to kind of step back and try to remember a year ago how this all sort of started. You may remember during the campaign and then immediately afterwards, there were a whole series of leaks regarding Trump and Trump's associates, suggesting that there was some sort of allegations of collusion with the Russians or Russian involvement or whatever. And all these leaks seem to be coming, most of these leaks seem to be coming from the intelligence community, the very people that are supposed to be the best in the world at keeping secrets, okay? And those people seem to be making a concerted effort to try to undermine Trump and Trump's associates and the new Trump administration. And what was it? It
was like a leak a day, I think. It was an exponential number. It was something like, if I recall, 25 times the number of leaks in the early months of the Trump administration than in any previous administration.
That's right. That's exactly right. It was extraordinary. I mean, intelligence officials that had worked for Obama were saying that this was really serious abuse of their offices. This kinds of things should not be happening. That holders of classified information are actively leaking for some apparent purpose. And at the time, as this was going on, it was not the easiest thing to understand what the whole objective here was. But now, as the year has gone on, it's become easier to understand that the collaboration between the intelligence community, between the Clinton campaign, and the Democratic National Committee, who are all working for the common objective of trying to undermine Donald Trump, his associates, in the new administration. And this so-called dossier, which is this document that at the center of this, is really the focus and shows most clearly the really corrupt nature of what was going on.
And I'm glad you said that. And 2 points I want to make very quickly, if I may. What makes, in my opinion, what makes this all the more egregious, and you've really nailed it, Jim, is this was after he was elected. This was not just to prevent, to despoil, if I may, a political campaign. It was to undermine a presidency.
That is something that we've never seen.
We've never seen it.
That is the remarkable thing. Obviously the media and the Democrats, were always against George W. Bush. They were always against Ronald Reagan. Who were always subjected to vicious attacks, throughout their whole presidency. But even this was something that never happened then, and we hadn't seen. And the extraordinary thing about it, the example, the dossier is a good example of how this played out. During the campaign, it's now come out, during the fall of 2016, it's now undisputed that various media organizations were aware of and apparently had copies of this so-called dossier, but none of them would run it. Okay, none of them would publish it. Now, let's face it; these weren't organizations that were predisposed to Donald Trump.
No. If they
not
the New York Times, the Post, none of those. Exactly.
If they had something that they thought was anywhere close to be that they could run, they would run it.
They would run it, absolutely.
But they chose not to. Okay, which tells you that even they were aware that this so-called dossier, contained information that was not just unsupported, but was outright falsehoods,
and was outrageous. Sorry,
it was outrageous. So during the campaign, this was floating around out there, but even the mainstream media wouldn't even run with it. Okay, but it was after the election, finally, that some internet news, so-called news site, BuzzFeed finally published it. And we found out that what had happened was that after the election, that good friend and supporter of Donald Trump, John McCain, actually obtained a copy of the dossier in early December. Ran straight to James Comey with the dossier. Okay. Now these are all the players here.
These are all the players.
You can see now with almost a year's retrospection that of how this has sort of played out. This document was created, this dossier was created by the Democrats, by the Clinton campaign.
Yes.
It was then used, it was so bad that the mainstream media wouldn't run it. But after the election, seeking to undermine apparently the administration, they decided to use it. They took it to the FBI so that they could continue accelerate their investigation into leaks to undermine Trump. And the dossier became the focus of this, and it was all the whole effort with all these different parties, all to undermine the new administration, undermine
a new president. Now, let's be clear. Number one, let's be clear. The dossier was salacious. It was vile and it was vulgar. In my mind, it took a pretty sick mind to come up with it to begin with. This Christopher Steele, I think Christopher Steele, was that his first name?
That's
right. Some wannabe or sometime or part-time secret agent in Great Britain, if we're to believe what they're telling us, but with close friends in our own FBI. So he puts together, at the behest of Hillary Clinton's people, this awful document. We pointed out, and this I urge anybody those watching right now to write in for this report. This report is simply amazing, put out by Judicial Watch back in September. And here's something interesting. Last week, the Washington Post broke the story as to where this all originated. It's in here.
It was already here.
It's here. That's right. From Judicial Watch back in September. So we'll have up on the screen how you can get your own copy of this. It's fascinating reading. But it makes it clear in here that the James Clapper, the director of
National Intelligence,
National Intelligence, and James Comey both based their investigations on this clearly bogus document. So what's the story there?
Well, when we talk about whether a document, anything coming out of Washington, is truthful or not, one of the ways that I use to evaluate whether there might be some credibility to something is to judge what the other side says about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, if the other side, comes back and says, "Oh, well, that's completely wrong," or whatever, then you have to kind of think about it some more. But in this case, the so-called dossier, nobody on the left claims today that there's anything actually real in it, which I think is very revealing.
That's
okay,
very
just as a way of testing what what's real or not.
Yeah.
If even they won't defend it, then then we don't really have to spend a lot of time.
They spawned it, but they won't defend it.
They won't defend it. It really tells you all you need to know about the truthfulness of it.
Right.
So everybody agrees, or nobody's willing to say otherwise, that there's any legitimacy to it. Okay, so when we get to before we actually get to what it is here, let's talk about, they keep calling it a dossier, okay, which is like a big fancy word, to try, I think, to try to lend some sort of credibility, to these this collection of falsehoods. Okay, what it is at best a report that was put together by this former intelligence person from a foreign country that simply states without support a variety of falsehoods. Okay,
right.
So that's all it is.
Well characterized.
It's nothing more than that.
Yeah.
It's just a collection of falsehoods. Okay, now. Most of them are outrageous, as you say, and don't deserve to be, parsed to, try to determine what is, because nobody claims now that there's any truthfulness to it.
Right.
All right. But what we have is something that was created that set in motion a series of events.
There we go.
Okay.
This is the crux. This is the crux.
And that is
the biggest
really
part of the
remarkable.
Remarkable.
I mean, the Clinton campaign, and they do not dispute this at this point, the Clinton campaign bought and paid for the creation of this collection of falsehoods, okay? They tried to sell it to the media during the campaign.
Right.
The media wouldn't publish it,
right.
for once, to their credit.
Yep.
They tried to sell it to the media after they lost the election. That wasn't enough. They took it to the FBI to promote this narrative that they kept, that they were trying to launch, that, the Trump administration is never going to be legitimate because it was created in collusion with the Russians.
Exactly.
Okay? And then they use this, as their evidence going forward.
The FBI made it the basis. Comey went before Congress and admitted that was the basis for the whole scurrilous, false Trump FBI connection charges.
That's right. That's exactly right. And
that's where we are.
I don't think we even know. That's right. And I don't even think we know yet. I think we're going to learn more, the full extent of that. I mean, did they really go to one of the FISA court, the secret court that signs off on surveillance? Did they really go to that FISA court, showing this so-called dossier and use that as their justification? Is that how they were doing these wiretaps of the Trump Tower after the election?
Precisely.
On the basis of this?
Precisely.
Is that what led to this whole thing that resulted in the special prosecutor and all this? I mean, the full extent of that, if we're really at the point where a campaign bought and paid for a collection of falsehoods and then use that to justify a criminal prosecution, and then use that to launch a criminal prosecution, I mean, that's an extraordinary
frightening
thing. It really is frightening. Nobody is safe if that can happen in this country, that you just by a combination of money and ideology and whatever else, that criminal prosecutions can be launched on that basis. I mean, that is something we've certainly never seen.
We've never seen it, and it is precisely where we are right now. They took a manufactured document. Let's once again do a manufactured document. The FBI, which by the way was colluding at the time it was exposed, the FBI was colluding to give Steele money for this document. Right. Let's not forget that. So they took it, Clapper took it, Comey took it, they manufactured the whole criminal prosecution, and we now have a special prosecutor out there running wild, prosecuting people on whatever, frankly, he can think to come up with, all based on a false document.
Absolutely. I mean, and when you look at it from beginning to the end, you can actually see that, well, this seems to be, you know, a coordinated strategy. I mean,
yes.
they
yes.
create this during, you know, last year, more than a year ago, they create this collection of falsehoods, and then they run with it to create, you know, through the campaign, now through the Trump administration, all to achieve, you know, their objective, which is to delegitimize and undercut the new administration. I mean, all from this using the media along the way, using the FBI along the FBI now,
the FBI.
And now this out of control prosecutor, all for this one objective. I mean, and the dossier is so-called dossier is right at the center of it.
That's the foundation of it. We have the lawsuit is, where does the lawsuit stand right now, just so our people will know what to expect in the coming months? Jim?
We're doing everything we can to move aggressively on this. You know, in one of those strange ironies of how the deep state is still in control, our lawsuit against the FBI seeking details on this is we're running into a stonewall put forth by the lawyers for the FBI and the Justice Department, who take the rather unbelievable position that, well, at this point, you know, there might be documents, we might have documents, but we can't even say confirm or deny if we have such documents. Now, these are documents that we all know exist.
We all know that.
And as a matter of fact, it was confirmed that this week they even handed over a bunch of them to Congress. But they're still taking this position in court that, well, we're not ready to say that they're even real or not. Well, we're going to cut through that.
Excellent.
You know, the litigation takes time, but sooner or later we're going to get there, and we're going to find out, you know, what's really kind of going on here. What's going on here? I mean, and you know, and eventually, you know, with the assistance of some good judges, we hope we will, you know, we'll get to the truth of what was going on. So.
It's fantastic. I know you will. And when Judicial Watch finds out, you will find out. We'll report directly to you what Jim's findings are. In the meantime, I again urge you, send for this document. It is a fascinating document. It lays out exactly what is behind the entire Mueller witch hunt, and it is a witch hunt. Earlier today I was talking to the staff and referring to him as Cotton Mueller from the Cotton Mather days. He's the modern day witch hunter, and this lays it all out the background. So send for it. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
It was great. It was very informative. And thank you for joining us and for your support for Judicial Watch.